Okay, so for this video, I'm going to show you how we make our sauerkraut. We made a batch of sauerkraut about 8 weeks ago, and it's ready to decant out of our container into jars. And we're going to make a fresh batch. So I'm going to kind of talk you through it and give you some information. One thing I wanted to start out with before I forget is one of the books that I really love and recommend is Wild Fermentation by Sander Alex Katz. It is chock full of so much information about all different kinds of fermenting, has information, recipes. He talks about all kinds of different stuff with the foods and the different bacterias and different ways to use the ferments. It's just a really great book. I've had it for years, and it's kind of like one we keep referring back to when I need to look something up. Um, so I'm going to talk about fermenting cabbage into sauerkraut. So there's different ways people do it. You can do it right into a mason jar, quart jar, or here I have 2 quart jars, half-gallon jars. Um, but we use what we call harsh cracks because we make a larger quantity and it's just a little easier to manage for us because it's sort of set it and forget it. I don't have to worry about burping it or anything like that. Um, so I'm going to kind of talk you through both ways in case you want to just use mason jars. Um, so I'm going to start out with, this is a 15-liter crock, and so we need to take the sauerkraut we already made out of here and put it in jars to store in the fridge. And then I will explain to you how to make sauerkraut once that's done. Um, so I'm going to start with opening up the crock. I'm going to have my husband do it because the lid's pretty heavy and we have to get the weights out. It has weights and it has a water chamber. So you seal it with water to keep mold and critters and anything out of it. So it has some stone weights that weigh the material down. Okay. So I just want to show you before we start decanting for the next batch, what I have is a big bowl full of cabbage. It's 2 heads of cabbage, organic cabbage that I got at the farmer's market, and I've just put a little bit of salt on them and just letting them sit for now while we decant. That'll help get the juices, the water and juice out of the cabbage so we can it'll start helping us produce a brine quicker. So, all right, I'm going to take this icky piece out of here. All right, my husband's going to start decanting it. We just use a wide mouth funnel and just kind of, we use our hands. And then this is called a Kraut Pounder. This one I got online from the Weston A. Price Foundation, Eugene, Oregon chapter. Somebody there makes these and they sell them. It's krautpounder.com if you're interested. I really like this one because it fits really well in a wide mouth mason jar. And if you have a smaller jar, you can just do it from the other end. And it's all one piece of wood. So we've had this for years and years. We just wash it up and keep it for next year. We use it for all kinds of things. So you just basically take it out and then we'll pound it down to release some of the juices. And then we'll add some of the brine from the crock to cover the sauerkraut.
We need to invent smell-o-vision.
Yeah, it does smell really good. And one of the things I will tell you is we put it in the crock and we put it in a closet in our basement to ferment, so it's cooler down there. So we find it takes like 8 or so weeks. I think it's been 8 or 9 since we did it. And so if you're doing it at room temperature, it will, ferment obviously quicker. And if you feel like it's too salty when you think it's ready and you taste it, just let it keep going. It'll get less salty as it ferments.
You can see this.
So we push it down also so we can fit more in the jars, so less jars taking up room in our fridge. And you can actually in the jars leave it out. You don't have to refrigerate it. We just do because it's pretty much at how we like it. So we don't want it to like ferment too much. And so the fridge slows it down. But if you wanted to, or if you found out, oh, I think it needs to go a little longer, just leave it out in the jars. If you have a crock, you can leave it in the jars and it'll keep fermenting. You just want to make sure that you have enough brine to cover the sauerkraut so it doesn't dry out or mold. And it's still really crunchy. I can hear it as he's pushing it in there. All right. I'm going to go grab a lid. I forgot the lids. Okay, so we have, you can just use the lids that come with your jars, but since lids are in short supply this year for canning, I've been saving my canning lids. So I ordered these plastic lids that fit on wide mouth. I have some for regular mouth jars too. And they come with a little sealing ring that fits inside. So they're kind of nice for stuff that you know you're going to store in the fridge or doesn't need to actually be canned. I'm just going to set this over here for right now. I'm going to rinse it off. So I'm not sure. We'll probably get, how much more is in there?
I think this is going to be close to full.
Okay. So yeah, we'll get like, I think about 4 quarts, maybe a little bit
A
more.
little bit less.
A little bit less than 4 smushed quarts worth of sauerkraut. Now, one of the things that, one of the reasons why we make so much sauerkraut every year is we eat it a little bit pretty much every day, several times a week at least, especially during the fall and winter, because it's really good to help you stay healthy. When you ferment foods, it helps to make them more digestible, which is easier on your gut. It also, the probiotics and enzymes and things are really good for your gut flora. So it helps keep your gut flora, which is where your immune system is. So it really helps you. But also, one of the things when making fermented foods that have live cultures in them, which this does, it can help actually part of the process of the fermentation, the forming of lactic acid and acetic acid and other things, will actually produce and create or break down into certain vitamins like B vitamins and vitamin C and things like that. So it's a good way to get extra vitamin boost and stay healthy. And it can also, another reason why you want to ferment certain things is it can help with anti-nutrients, even if you want to call poisons. So like say grains, for instance, if you soak and ferment grains, it helps to get rid of phytic acid, which is not digestible and not great for you, and can make grains much more digestible and the vitamins in them and the proteins and all that kind of stuff more bioavailable to your body. So there's lots of reasons. There's actually a whole bunch of information in Wild Fermentation about the benefits of fermentation. And he tells about some different historical things that discuss like benefits they found by doing these studies in the past and things that they learned about from history and some of the medical studies they've done. It's really fascinating information. All right, so it looks like we're about done. I'm gonna grab one more lid. Okay, so we got about just shy of 5 quarts out of that, what we had in the crock. Not too bad. Okay, so I'm just gonna wipe up this mess. Okay, so now we have a smaller crock that I'm going to use for this because there's not as much, we don't have as much cabbage this time. So I just decanted another type of sauerkraut out of this crock. I made like a kimchi style. So I don't like Napa cabbage, so I kind of did my own thing with this, but it's regular green cabbage that we sliced up. I added shredded daikon radish, some sliced green onions, ginger, garlic, and Korean chili pepper, and a cayenne pepper, um, and then salt, obviously. And I just let it create a brine and put it in here, and ate about 7 weeks, I think, for this one because we did it about a week later. And we just decanted it, and it's a little bit spicy and absolutely delicious. And we got out of how much we put in here, we ended up with 6 quarts, I think. So, and it was, I think, 2 heads of cabbage, if I remember correctly. It's been a while, so I'm not sure. But anyway, we tasted it, and it's really yummy. So there's different versions you can do. So what I'm doing with this one, I don't think I need this right now. I put some salt into the bowl, but not the full amount. And they say approximately, you can really just kind of guesstimate it, but approximately 3 tablespoons to 5 pounds of cabbage. I didn't actually weigh this cabbage out. I just sort of do it by feel because I've made it enough times. So I'm going to put a layer of cabbage in here. And then I'm going to put a little bit of salt. And I use sea salt. This happens to be coarse sea salt because it's what I have right now. And it's fine because it'll break down in there as the brine. So I'm just going to mix the salt into the cabbage. And then I'm going to get on my stool because I'm short and it makes it easier to get leverage. And I just kind of mix it around. You can massage it with your hand. I like to do that. Sometimes you can just even put it in a bowl as long as it's not going to overflow. And massage it till it's nice and soft and the liquid comes out. And then you can put it into the mason jars and pound it in there the best you can, or use your hand. I like to use the Kraut Pounder in here just because it's so deep. It's a little bit easier than trying to massage it all. But you just pound it. So you do a layer with a sprinkling of salt, and just pound it till it's releasing its liquid. And the fresher the cabbage is, the more liquid it'll have. If for some reason, you got your cabbage at the grocery store, so you don't really know how old it is, and you feel like it doesn't have enough liquid coming out, like I don't know how old this cabbage is necessarily, so it may not have enough liquid. You can make a brine. You can boil some water and let it cool with salt. So you add I'd say like a couple of teaspoons to a quart of water. You can look up the ratio. I don't remember it off the top of my head. And let it cool, and then just use that as a brine. So you can just do like a saltwater brine. And then you just keep doing the same thing. And then you add more cabbage, another layer, and some more salt. And I'm also going to put some caraway seeds to mix in there because we like it with caraway seeds. It gives it that yummy flavor. So just add a few in there. Just kind of mix it all up. So when you do end up finished with putting it all together, you want to make sure that all the cabbage is covered in brine liquid. Might need you to make some brine. I don't think, I don't know. All right, I'm going to keep layering this in here. So when you pound it in, it will obviously mush it down in there. So you'll fit a lot more cabbage. And as it releases its liquid, it also, gets softer. So it doesn't take up as much space. So it'll look like a whole lot of cabbage to begin with, but it does kind of ferment down into a lot less material. I'm going to add some more. Oops. Do you want to compound? I'm going to let Jay pound for a little bit. Okay, so he's stronger. He can pound it harder than I can. So another thing was going to tell you, so if you were doing it in mason jars instead of in a crock, what I would recommend is have a bowl that you have room to toss your cabbage without it falling out, so you don't want to overfull. And like say this, you would sprinkle it with some salt and just sit there and massage it like this, just kind of play with it for quite a while. I mean, you can be watching TV while you're doing it or whatever, listening to a book on tape, and just kind of relaxing to sit there and just with the salt on it and just massage it and massage it until you'll notice it gets, instead of the texture it is raw, it'll get a lot softer and you'll have liquid coming out. And when you squeeze it, quite a bit of liquid will come out. And then when it's to that stage, which I'd be here for a long time to get it to that stage on camera, you can then put it into the jar and pound it down, push it down with your hand or with a pounding stick, or even a wooden spoon or anything you have that'll fit, and push it down as much as you can and make sure you have brine to cover it. So make sure the liquid comes up to cover it, and if it doesn't, then make some brine and add it. This cabbage doesn't seem as watery as usual. So I sliced this in the food processor with the shredding blade. But you can hand chop it, so you can have it as thin or thick as you want. We kind of like it. I think this is the fatter blade, and some of the pieces don't go all the way through the blade so they get a few bigger pieces, but we kind of like that texture. Okay, so my recommendation if you're making it in a, so you can see it just from the little bit of working I've done with it, it's getting like a different texture. It's not, it's a little more translucent than it was. It's not quite there, but it's getting there. And there's not a whole lot of liquid in it, which I think is just this cabbage is not as liquidy. So we'll probably have to make some brine for this batch. It's hard to know when the farmer actually harvested the cabbage because they sometimes keep them in cold storage, so you don't know how old it is. Um, so what I was going to tell you is if you're going to make it in a jar, you're going to put it in there, you're going to push it down, and you're going to hope that there's enough liquid to cover it or add some brine. Once you've got it pretty full, you probably don't want to go beyond like about there on a, you want to have it nice and packed in there. You want something that will weigh it down. So you could take a piece of the outer leaf of the cabbage and stick it over all the material in your jar, so it kind of gives it a little cover. And then you want something to weigh it down, so you could put a bag of like a Ziploc bag with water, or they make actual little glass weights for jars that you could purchase, or you could get a nice size rock that fits in there and wash it, scrub it real good, or even wrap it in plastic or something and stick it on top to weigh everything down so it stays in the brine. And then you're just going to put a lid on it and have it sit, and it'll sputter a bit, and you'll have to kind of burp it and make sure it doesn't, spew all the liquid out. Make sure the liquid, level stays above the cabbage. And then you just, let it go for several weeks, and then you can taste it. I'm in a small jar. You could probably even taste it in like maybe 4 weeks and see if it's still too salty or doesn't taste like sauerkraut to you. Let it keep going. Because everybody's house is going to be a little bit different with the microbes in the air and the temperature, and the quantity will take, we're doing a big crock, it takes longer than a smaller jar will, so it's kind of a guessing game in that respect. But you can kind of taste it, I'd say probably at least 4 weeks, and then just keep tasting it maybe every week till it's where you like it, and then you can put it in your fridge. And so when we get finished with this to the point we're ready, it's going to need brine, but you want to try and get all the little bits, like if you're using a crock, you want all the little bits of cabbage off the sides and the top, so that when you put the weights in and have the brine covering it, there's no cabbage floating because it'll mold. And you may end up with a little bit of stuff that's not moldy but looks kind of brownish on the top. That's just a yeast that sometimes forms. And you can just, scrape it out before you take out the sauerkraut. So that's all there is to it, to making sauerkraut. And you can make it all different. There's all different recipes for different varieties. I actually one year did one where I thinly sliced some apples. I just put the apples in, thinly sliced, I cored them and everything, and added those with the sauerkraut and a cinnamon stick in there. It was delicious. It was like a little bit sweet and sour. It was really good. I haven't done that one in a long time. Might have to do that. But we usually just do the caraway seeds because it's our favorite, and then the kimchi. We love kimchi, and it's expensive. We get a little tiny jar of kimchi at the grocery store that's like, I don't know, $5 or $6, and so for probably $15 worth of ingredients and my time, we got 6 quarts. So, it's definitely more economical. But that's pretty much all there is to it. And I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you make some yummy ferments. See you on the next video.